Sujin wrapped the bandage around the little boy's arm and smiled at him. He had fallen from a tree near the wheat fields, and his mother was worried, but it was nothing serious. Just a small crack in the bone. Sujin told the mother to keep him still for a few days and sent them home. It was a quiet morning on Colony Hana. The sun was warm, the sky was clear, and the fields stretched out golden and endless in every direction. More than 1 million people lived here. Farmers, teachers, doctors, children. It was the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. That changed in a single moment. The first explosion hit the central market. Sujin felt the ground shake beneath her feet and grabbed the edge of her desk. Then came the sound, a deep rolling thunder that didn't stop. She ran to the window and saw fire falling from the sky. Not meteors, not accidents. Ships. Massive warships hung above the colony like dark clouds, and beams of light were cutting through buildings, streets, and homes like knives through paper. The Valori had come. Their message played on every screen and every speaker across the colony. A cold, flat voice that said only this: "This system is reclaimed. You have no rights here." Then the killing began. Sujin grabbed her emergency bag and ran. She pulled 3 children from a burning school on her way to the underground shelters. She dragged an old man through the smoke when his legs gave out. She kept moving because if she stopped, she would think, and if she thought, she would freeze. The shelters were packed. People were screaming, crying, holding each other. Above them, the world was ending. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it stopped, the ground troops came. Valori soldiers moved through the streets in organized lines. They were tall, silver-skinned, and they moved with the calm confidence of people who had done this many times before. They went door to door. Anyone who resisted was shot. Anyone who ran was shot. Anyone who begged was ignored and then shot. They burned the fields. They destroyed the water systems. They collapsed the hospital where Sujin had worked that very morning. In 72 hours, more than 800,000 people were dead. 800,000. Men, women, children, elderly, gone. Colony Hana, which had been a place of wheat and sunshine and laughter, became a graveyard. Far away, on Earth, Park Nari received the first distress signals. They came in broken pieces, screams, static, half-finished sentences begging for help. Nari was Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, and she had spent years learning to be calm, professional, and measured. But when she heard the recordings from Hana, her hands shook. She gathered every piece of evidence she could and rushed to the council chambers. The Galactic Council was a grand hall, filled with representatives of more than 200 species. They governed the galaxy through laws, treaties, and agreements. Nari had always believed in this system. She had always believed that if something terrible happened, the council would act. She stood at the center of the chamber and played the footage from Hana. The burning, the bodies, the children running with nowhere to go. She demanded emergency intervention. She called for sanctions against the Valori. She asked for military support. The chamber was quiet, too quiet. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, one delegate from a species Nari had considered friendly leaned forward and said, almost casually, that the Valori had filed a territorial reclamation notice 3 weeks ago. The council had reviewed it and approved it. Colony Hana was in a system the Valori had historical claims to. The paperwork was in order. Nari stared at him. She looked around the room. Some delegates looked away. Others stared back with blank faces. They had known. All of them had known that the Valori were coming for Hana, and no one had told Earth. No one had warned a single person on that colony. 1 million people had been left to die because the paperwork was in order. Nari leaned into the microphone. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You knew," she said. You all knew. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber without looking back. On Earth, President Ryu Hajin called an emergency session of the United Earth Government. Every leader, every general, every advisor was present. The room was dark. Hajin stood at the front and played the footage from Hana on the largest screen available. He played all of it. Every minute. The room watched in complete silence. Some looked away and then forced themselves to look back. When the footage ended, no one spoke for a long time. Hajin stood slowly. His face was hard. His voice was steady but low, like a fire that had not yet reached its full heat. For 40 years, he said, we followed their rules. We disarmed our ships. We reduced our military. We signed their treaties. We smiled at species who looked down on us. We did everything they asked because we believed that being civilized meant being safe. He paused. 800,000 of our people are dead, burned alive on a world we built with our own hands. And the galaxy watched it happen. They approved it. They signed off on it. He looked across the room. So here is what we do now. We stop being civilized. The vote was unanimous. Every hand went up. Not a single person hesitated. That night, a single coded order went out across Earth's most secret channels. 2 words. Protocol Forge. Deep in orbit above Earth, aboard a quiet military station, Admiral Han Ji-soo sat alone in her quarters. She was a woman of 53 years, with short gray hair and eyes that rarely showed emotion. She had spent her career preparing for a day she hoped would never come. Her screen lit up with an encrypted message. She read it once, then again, then a third time. Forge is live. You are cleared for everything. Jisoo closed her eyes. She breathed in slowly. She breathed out. When she opened her eyes again, every trace of softness was gone. What remained was something the galaxy had never seen before and would soon learn to fear. She pressed her communicator and said 4 words. Wake up the fleet. The asteroid had no name. It didn't appear on any Galactic Council star chart. It sat in the cold, dark edge of Earth's solar system, far from the sun, far from trade routes, far from anyone who might ask questions. From the outside, it looked like a dead rock floating through empty space. From the inside, it was the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Yoon Dae-ho stood on a metal platform overlooking the main construction bay and felt the same thing he felt every morning, pride and a deep, quiet sadness that the day had finally come to use what he had built. Below him, stretching out for kilometers in every direction, was the heart of Protocol Forge. Rows of warships hung in construction cradles, dark and heavy and waiting. 312 of them, heavy cruisers, fast destroyers, bomber carriers, and things that didn't have proper names yet, because no one in the galaxy had ever built anything like them. 20 years of Daeho's life were in these walls. 20 years of secret work, hidden budgets, and silent prayers that none of it would ever be needed. But it was needed now, and Daeho was ready. The ships were only part of it. Along the lower levels of the facility sat the weapons. Kinetic bombardment platforms that could drop rods of heavy metal from orbit at speeds that turned them into something worse than nuclear bombs. Electromagnetic pulse arrays designed specifically to shut down Valori shielding technology. Drone swarms so small they could fit in a soldier's pocket, and so deadly they could take apart a warship from the inside. And in the deepest, most secured vault in the entire facility, behind 7 locked doors and 2 armed guards who had never been told what they were protecting, sat something simply called Sunbreak. No one talked about Sunbreak. No one described it. Its file was 3 words long, last resort only. While Daeho prepared the fleet, Shin Yuna was already 3 steps ahead. Yuna was Earth's intelligence director, A woman who spoke 6 alien languages and had spent the last 15 years building a spy network so vast and so quiet that not a single Galactic Council species knew it existed. She had agents on 47 worlds. She had informants inside the Valori military command. She had stolen communication codes, fleet deployment schedules, supply route maps, and the personal habits of every Valori admiral down to what they ate for breakfast. She stood before the command council in a secure room beneath the city of Busan and laid it all out on the table. Every Valori fleet position, every weakness in their defense grid, the exact number of ships they had and where each one was parked, the location of their homeworld, and the military installations that protected it. She had been collecting this information for years, piece by piece, agent by agent, because she had always known that the galaxy was not as safe as it pretended to be. "We know everything about them," Yuna said calmly. "They know nothing about us. That is the only advantage we need." 3 days after Protocol Forge was activated, the Galactic Council sent a diplomatic envoy to Earth. 5 representatives from 5 different species arrived on a shuttle decorated with the Council's symbol of peace, a white circle on a blue field. They came with soft voices and careful words. They urged restraint. They talked about proportional response, about the importance of maintaining galactic stability, about the dangers of escalation. Park Nari met them at the door of the Earth government building. She was dressed in black. She did not smile. She did not invite them to sit. She stood in front of them and held out a small data chip. "What is this?" the lead envoy asked. "Names," Nari said. 814,322 names. Every person who died on Hana. I suggest you read them before you talk to me about restraint." The envoy took the chip, but did not look at it. He started to say something about process and procedure. Nari cut him off. "You had your chance to be useful," she said. "That window is closed. Go home." The envoy left. His hands were shaking, though he tried to hide it. In orbit, the fleet launched. Ship after ship after ship rose from the hollowed asteroid and formed into battle groups. Council observers at a monitoring station near Jupiter detected the launch and sent panicked reports back to the Council chambers. Earth was supposed to have 12 patrol vessels. 12 small, lightly armed ships for basic defense. What the observers saw was an armada. Hundreds of warships, armed and moving with purpose. The reports caused something close to panic in the Council. How had humans built all of this without anyone noticing? How long had they been preparing? What else were they hiding? The answer was simple. Humans had never trusted the galaxy. Not fully, not completely. They had smiled and signed treaties and followed rules, but somewhere deep in the back of their collective mind, they had always known that the day might come when smiles and rules would not be enough. So they had prepared, quietly, patiently, for 40 years. On a military transport heading toward the fleet, Quan Taesun stood before his soldiers. Taesun was a big man with a scarred face and a voice like gravel. He led Earth's Special Operations Command, the soldiers who trained for the fights no one else wanted. Zero-gravity combat, boarding actions, close-quarters killing. They trained in conditions that most galactic species considered barbaric. They fought in ways that the Council had specifically banned in their rules of civilized warfare. Taesun did not care about the Council's rules. Not anymore. "Listen to me," he said to his troops. "The galaxy thinks humans are soft. They think we're farmers and diplomats. They think we got lucky with technology and stumbled into space. They forgot what we are. They forgot what we were before we decided to be polite." He paused and looked at their faces. Hard, angry, ready. Time to remind them. Aboard the ESS Ironfleet, the flagship of the Earth Fleet, Captain Bae Minho stood on the bridge and watched the stars ahead. The ship was massive and built for one purpose, to fight and to win. Minho had trained for this command his entire career. He had run simulations of a war against the Valori 1,000 times. Now it was real. He looked at his crew. Every face was set. Every jaw was tight. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. They all knew what had happened on Hana. They all knew what they were going to do about it. The fleet crossed into Valori-controlled space like a shadow moving across a wall. A Valori border station detected them and sent a transmission demanding identification and authorization codes. Standard procedure. Routine. The kind of thing that happened every day in civilized space. Minho looked at the communication officer and nodded. The officer opened a channel. "This is the Earth Fleet," Minho said. His voice was flat and final. "We are not here to talk." The border station had 4 seconds to understand what that meant, before the first volley turned it into dust. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. In the first week alone, Earth's fleet tore through 14 Valori border systems like fire through dry grass. They moved fast, faster than any military campaign in recorded galactic history. 1 system per day, sometimes 2. They did not stop to negotiate. They did not pause to send warnings. They arrived, they destroyed every military target in the system, and they moved on. The Valori, who had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 6,000 years, without serious challenge, could not believe what was happening. They kept sending messages to Earth, demanding a ceasefire, demanding talks, demanding explanations. Earth did not respond to a single one. Admiral Han Jisoo ran the war from a command room aboard the Iron Wake. The room was dark, lit only by the blue glow of tactical displays that showed every ship, every target, every movement across 100 star systems. Jisoo stood at the center of it all, like a statue. She did not raise her voice. She did not celebrate when a system fell. She simply looked at the display, crossed a target off her list, and gave the next order. Her staff had started to notice something about her. She never sat down. She barely ate. And she had not smiled once since the fleet left Earth. One of her aides, a young officer named Gil Unji, asked her quietly one evening how far they planned to go. Jisoo looked at her with eyes that held no warmth. "Until they understand," she said, "that what they did has a cost they cannot pay." Then she turned back to her display, and the conversation was over. On the ground, the war was even more brutal. Quan Tae-soon led his Special Operations Forces onto Valori military worlds with a ferocity that shocked everyone who witnessed it. His soldiers used tactics the galaxy had never seen. They deployed drone swarms that could enter a building through a ventilation shaft and disable every person inside in 30 seconds. They used adaptive camouflage that made them nearly invisible in any environment. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting the screams from Hana on Valori military frequencies before an attack, so that every Valori soldier knew exactly why the humans were coming. The Valori military had fought dozens of wars over their long history, but they had always fought species who followed the Galactic Council's rules of civilized warfare. Announce your intentions. Give the enemy time to prepare. Limit civilian damage. Fight during designated hours. The humans followed none of these rules. They attacked at night. They attacked during meal times. They attacked from directions that should have been impossible. Taeson's forces took a heavily fortified Valori military world in 14 hours. The Valori had expected to hold it for months. After the battle, Taeson walked through the captured command center and looked at the Valori officers sitting in a line with their hands bound. They stared at him with a mixture of fear and disbelief. One of them, a senior commander, spoke through a translator. "You fight without honor," the Valori said. Taeson stopped walking. He looked down at the commander with a face that showed nothing. "You burned 800,000 civilians alive," Taeson said. "Don't talk to me about honor." While the fleet pushed deeper into Valori space, the Galactic Council was falling apart. An emergency session was called, and the chamber was full for the first time in decades. Species that had not attended a council meeting in years were now present. watching the displays that showed Earth's advance with wide eyes. Several delegates demanded that the Council intervene militarily to stop the humans. Others argued that Earth had every right to respond. The debate went back and forth for hours, growing louder and more desperate. Then, Shin Yuna made her move. Through channels that could not be traced back to Earth, she leaked a massive file to every news network in the galaxy. The file contained evidence, communications, financial records, meeting transcripts, proving that 14 Council species had secretly supported the Valori attack on Hana. Some had provided resources. Some had shared intelligence about Earth's defenses. Some had simply voted to approve the territorial reclamation, knowing exactly what would happen, because they wanted humanity to stay small and weak and easy to control. The leak hit the Council like a bomb. Within hours, accusations were flying across the chamber. Species that had been allies for centuries were suddenly pointing fingers at each other. 3 delegations walked out. 2 more demanded investigations. The Council, which was supposed to be the stable center of galactic governance, crumbled into chaos and mutual distrust. It certainly could not organize any kind of military response against Earth, which was exactly what Yuna had planned. Back on Colony Hana, Sujin had spent weeks organizing the survivors. There were not many, a few thousand out of more than 1 million. They lived in the underground shelters, eating stored food and recycled water, waiting. Sujin had become their leader, not because she wanted to be, but because she was the one who kept moving when everyone else stopped. She treated the wounded. She rationed the food. She held people when they cried at night and could not stop. And every evening, by the light of a small lamp, she wrote names. Every name she could remember. Every person she had known, treated, lived beside, smiled at. She wrote them all down on sheets of paper, one after another, until the list grew so long she had to bind the pages together. When the Earth Liberation Force finally arrived at Hana, Sujin walked out of the shelters into the sunlight for the first time in weeks. The sky above her was filled with Earth warships. The ground around her was ash and ruin. She walked to the commanding officer and held out the bound pages. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were dry. She had cried all her tears weeks ago. "These are the names," she said. "Every one I could remember. Make sure they answer for all of them." The officer took the pages carefully, like they were made of glass. He looked at the thickness of the stack, and his face tightened. He nodded once and said, "They will." Far from Hana, far from the crumbling council, far from the burning Valori border systems, Yoon Daeho sat alone in the deepest vault of the forge. In front of him was a console with a single screen. On the screen were 2 words, "Sunbreak, Standby." Daeho had built this weapon with his own hands. He understood better than anyone what it could do. He had hoped, truly and deeply, that no one would ever order him to use it. His communicator buzzed. He read the message. Authorization confirmed. Deploy when ordered. Daeho stared at the screen for a long time. Then he placed his hands on the console and began the activation sequence. The machine hummed to life beneath his fingers. And somewhere in the cold dark of space, something terrible began to wake up. The Valori gathered everything they had. Every warship, every armed transport, every orbital platform that could carry a weapon was pulled back to their homeworld. Over 2,000 ships formed a wall of metal and energy around Valori Prime, layer after layer, so thick that the stars behind them disappeared. It was the largest military gathering in the recorded history of the galaxy. The Valori High Command stood in their war room and looked at the display showing their fleet, and believed, truly believed, that no force in existence could break through it. They had ruled for 6,000 years. They had conquered dozens of species. They would not fall to humans, not to the small soft creatures who had spent 40 years bowing and smiling and following rules. Admiral Han Jisu's fleet arrived 3 days later. 208 ships against more than 2,000. The numbers were not in Earth's favor. Every tactical officer in the fleet knew it. Every captain could see it on their displays. The Valori outnumbered them merely 10-1. Jisoo stood at the center of her command room and looked at the enemy fleet on the main screen. She was silent for a long moment. Then she opened a channel to every ship in the Earth fleet. "They pulled everything into one place," she said. Her voice was calm, almost quiet. "Every ship, every weapon, everything they have is right here in front of us. Good, that saves us time. All ships, attack formation. Do not stop until I tell you to stop." The Battle of Valori Prime began. Earth's ships hit the Valori lines like a hammer hitting glass. The human ships were smaller and faster, and they moved in patterns the Valori had never seen, weaving between enemy formations, hitting from below and above at the same time, disappearing behind debris fields, and then striking from unexpected angles. The Valori fought back with raw numbers, filling space with weapons fire so dense it looked like a solid wall of light. Ships on both sides began to burn and break. Captain Bae Minho drove the Iron Wake straight into the heart of the Valori formation. The flagship was built to take punishment, and it did. Hits landed against the hull, one after another, shaking the entire ship, blowing out systems, killing crew members at their stations. Minho did not flinch. When the weapons officer reported that the forward batteries were losing power, Minho ordered power pulled from life support on the lower decks. When the shields failed on the port side, he turned the damaged side away from the enemy and kept firing with everything he had left. "Sir, we're taking critical damage," his first officer said. "So are they," Minho said. "Keep firing." Human pilots and smaller attack ships flew with a recklessness that horrified the Valori. When their weapons ran empty, some of them rammed their ships into Valori vessels. Human boarding teams launched themselves across the gap between ships in nothing but armored suits, cut through hull plating with plasma torches, and fought Valori soldiers hand-to-hand in narrow corridors. The Valori had never experienced anything like it. They had never fought a species that seemed completely willing to die as long as they took the enemy with them. But the numbers were still against Earth. For every Valori ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. The human fleet was shrinking. The battle was becoming a war of survival, and survival favored the side with more ships. Then, Jisoo gave the order. Deploy Sunbreak. Deep in the fleet's formation, a single ship that looked no different from the others opened a panel on its underside. Inside was a device about the size of a small room. Black, smooth, covered in lines of faintly glowing energy. Yoon Daeho watched from a forge through a secure video link as his creation powered up to full capacity. His hands were gripping the edge of his console so hard, his knuckles were white. Sunbreak fired. It sent a focused pulse of energy not at the Valori fleet, not at the planet, but at the star. Valori Prime's sun. The pulse hit the star's core and disrupted its natural balance for exactly 11 seconds. That was enough. The star pulsed, a controlled, directed solar flare aimed along a specific path, like a cannon made of a sun. The wave of energy swept across the Valori system in minutes. It did not destroy the planet. It was not designed to. The flare passed over Valori Prime and stripped away every piece of technology that was not deep underground. The orbital defense grid melted. Satellites burned up like paper. Every unshielded electronic system on every ship in the Valori fleet went dead at the same moment. Shields dropped. Weapons went silent. Engines stopped. Communications cut out. 2,000 warships became 2,000 pieces of floating metal, dark and powerless. The sky above Valori Prime turned white. On the surface, the Valori people looked up and saw their sun burning brighter than it ever had. and they felt a fear that their species had never known in 6,000 years of dominance. Earth's fleet, shielded by technology Daiho had built specifically for this moment, was untouched. Jisoo looked at the display. Every Valori ship was marked as disabled. The entire defense grid was gone. The planet below was exposed, helpless and silent. "All ships cease fire," Jisoo said. "Taesun, you are clear to drop." Kwan Taesun's ground forces descended on Valori Prime in heavy transports. They landed on government buildings, military bases, and communication centers. Taesun had given his soldiers specific orders before they launched, and he repeated them one more time as the transports fell through the white-lit atmosphere. "Civilians are not targets," he said. "We do not touch them. We do not threaten them. We do not look at them wrong. We are not here to do what they did to us. We are here to end this. Are we clear?" Every soldier answered yes. The occupation of Valori Prime took 8 hours. There was almost no resistance. The Valori military, without communications or coordination, could not organize a defense. Taesun's forces moved through the capital city with precision, securing every strategic location and disarming every soldier they found. The Valori civilians watched from their windows with wide, frightened eyes. The humans did not hurt them. They did not even shout. The Valori High Command was captured in their underground war room. They were brought to the surface and placed in a room with a single screen. Kwan Taesun walked in, set a data chip into the player, and pressed play. The screen showed the footage from Colony Hana. Every minute of it. The burning, the screaming, the bodies, the mass graves. The Valori leaders were forced to watch all of it. Then Taesun placed a stack of bound papers on the table in front of them. Sujin's list. Every name, handwritten. "Read 'em," Taesun said. "Every single one." Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched in stunned, absolute silence. No one spoke. No one made demands. 12 species quietly began dismantling their own secret military programs aimed at Earth. 20 more sent private messages asking for peace agreements. The galaxy had changed in a single day, and everyone knew it. In her command room, Admiral Han Jisoo finally sat down. She looked at the display showing Valori Prime, quiet and conquered below her fleet. She did not smile. She simply closed her eyes for a moment and thought of Hana. Then she opened her eyes and said, "Get me Ambassador Park. It's time for her to finish this." Park Nari walked into the Galactic Council chamber, wearing the same black clothes she had worn since the day Hana burned. The last time she had stood in this room, she had begged for help. She had played footage of her people dying and asked 200 species to do something, anything, and they had sat in their chairs and told her that the paperwork was in order. She remembered their faces. She remembered every single one of them looking away. Now none of them looked away. Every seat in the chamber was filled. Every eye was on her. The room was completely silent. No one whispered. No one moved. They were afraid. She could see it in the way they sat, in the way their hands gripped their desks, in the way some of them could not meet her eyes. Good. They should be afraid, not because Earth wanted to hurt them, but because they needed to understand something that they had failed to understand before. Nari reached the central podium and stood still for a moment. She did not rush. She let the silence fill the room until it became heavy, until it pressed down on everyone like a weight. Then she spoke. 40 years ago, we came to this council as newcomers. We were small. We were young. We had just learned to travel between stars, and we were amazed by what we found. A galaxy full of life, a system of laws and cooperation. We thought we had found something good, something worth being part of. So we followed your rules. We disarmed our warships. We reduced our military. We opened our borders. We traded fairly. We sat in this chamber and listened and learned, and tried to be good members of your civilization. She paused. And then you let the Valori burn our colony to the ground. You approved it. 14 of you helped make it happen. And the rest of you sat here and did nothing, because we were small and the Valori were useful. And you decided that our lives were worth less than your comfort. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Several delegates shifted in their seats. One looked like he might speak, then thought better of it. So we did what you forced us to do, Nari continued. We solved the problem ourselves. We built what we needed to build. We fought the way we needed to fight. And now the Valori Dominion, which stood for 6,000 years, is finished. And you are sitting here, wondering if you are next. She let that hang in the air. You are not next. That is not who we are. We did not destroy the Valori people. We did not kill their civilians. We did not burn their cities, or poison their water, or murder their children, because that is what they did to us, and we refuse to become what they were. But understand this clearly. We will never again allow what happened on Hana to happen to any of our people, or to anyone else's people. Not ever. Nari placed a document on the podium. It was Earth's terms for the new galactic order. The Valori Dominion would be dissolved. Its military would be permanently dismantled. Its leaders would face trial for the massacre on Hana. A new Charter of Rights would be established that protected all species, especially small ones, especially new ones, especially the ones who had no fleet and no weapons and no way to defend themselves. Because those were the people the Council was supposed to protect, and it had failed. Any future massacre of civilians by any species would be met with the full, unrestricted response of Earth's military. The Council would be restructured with real accountability, and the 14 species that had helped the Valori would pay reparations to the survivors of Hana. These are not suggestions, Nari said. These are terms. You will accept them because you have no other choice. But more than that, you should accept them because they are right. Because this is what civilization is supposed to look like. Not the version you had, where the powerful eat the weak and call it order. A real one, where everyone is protected. Where massacres have consequences. Where no one has to smile at the people planning to kill them. The Council voted. The terms passed with overwhelming support. No one argued. No one objected. The galaxy had found its new center, and it was not the Council anymore. It was Earth. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Valori Dominion was broken into smaller states, each with limited military capability and Council oversight. The 14 species paid their reparations. The new Charter of Rights was signed by every member of the Council. Earth's fleet remained active, patrolling, watching. A reminder. Yundeho returned to the forge and began building again. Not because Earth wanted more war, but because Earth had learned the only lesson the galaxy had to teach. Peace lasted only as long as the strength behind it. Deho worked quietly, as he always had, building things he hoped would never be used, knowing they might be. Admiral Han Jisoo visited Colony Hana. The colony was being rebuilt, new buildings rising from the ashes, new fields being planted where the old ones had burned. At the center of the colony stood a memorial wall made of black stone. Carved into it were 814,322 names, every person who had died. Jisoo walked to the wall and placed her hand flat against the stone. She stood there for a long time. Her shoulders shook once, just once. Then she straightened her back, lifted her chin, and walked away without looking back. Oh Sujin reopened her clinic. It was smaller than the old one, built from temporary materials, but it worked. On her first day back, a mother brought in a child with a broken arm. fallen from a tree near the new fields. Sujin wrapped the bandage and smiled at the boy, just as she had on the morning the world ended. Life continued. But through the clinic window, against the clear sky, an Earth warship hung in orbit, like a dark star. It would always be there now. Sujin looked at it for a moment, then turned back to her patient. President Ryu Hajin gave his final address on the matter from the steps of the Earth government building. Millions watched across every human world. "We did not want this," he said. "We wanted to be good neighbors. We wanted to believe the galaxy was kind. It is not. The galaxy respects strength and remembers pain. So we will be kind. We will always be kind, but we will never be weak again. Not for anyone. Not for any reason." On a training base on a moon far from Earth, Kwon Tae-soon watched a new generation of soldiers running drills in the cold morning air. They were young, strong, and serious. One of them, a recruit barely old enough to be called an adult, jogged up to him during a break and asked, "Sir, do you think we'll have to fight again?" Tae-soon looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, past the clouds and the atmosphere and the black of space, the galaxy was turning. Species were watching Earth now. Some with respect, some with fear, some maybe with the same quiet calculation that the Valori once had. "That depends," Tae-soon said, "on whether they remember what happens when they touch our people." The recruit nodded and ran back to the drills. Tae-soon watched him go, and then looked at the sky again. He stayed there for a long time, watching, waiting, ready. 100 years later, a Galactic Council historian wrote a passage that would be quoted more than almost anything else in the academic record of the galaxy. The humans were unremarkable for their first 40 years among us. Quiet, cooperative, almost forgettable. It was the great mistake of the Valori, and indeed of the entire council, to believe that this meant they were harmless. They were not harmless. They were patient. And when that patience ended, the galaxy learned a truth it will never forget. That the most dangerous creature in the universe is not the one that roars the loudest. It is the one that sits quietly, watches, learns, and waits. Because when it finally moves, civilizations fall. And across the rebuilt fields of Colony Hana, under the watchful shadow of Earth's warships, the wheat grew tall and golden again. Life went on, but the galaxy never forgot.